Hello, welcome to Issues and Ideas. I'm Chris DeBello. You may have heard the news reports that the Trump administration is planning to spend $45 billion for immigrant detention centers across the U.S., as has been the case with everything having to do with ICE. This is already proving to be a poorly planned move, which is creating chaos and anger right at the start. One of the first new immigrant detention center locations appears to be set for Roxbury, New Jersey, which is in the northwest part of the state. And the curious part of this choice of location by ICE is how it's not really near any major transportation hub like a major airport. It's not in a location where there's been an inordinate amount of undocumented immigrant activity, and the infrastructure isn't even close to being able to deal with a facility like this. Our first guest today has been a leading voice against this detention center, who says that the power of the voice of the people is not silenced yet. He's also a force behind the No ICE North Jersey Alliance. William Angus, how are you today, William?
Doing pretty good, considering that they just announced the sale of the property.
Yes, I know.
But we're still in good spirits, though.
And, by the way, to get more information about the No ICE North Jersey Alliance, it's no-roxbury-jails.com. We have that link over at our website. So just to catch up on people who have been not really hearing much about this, because, again, it's really happening in an area where people weren't expecting it. We've seen a couple of other privately owned detention centers, one in Newark and one in the central part of the state. But this is quite the odd location, though, is it not?
Yeah, it's very strange to us because, I imagine that DHS put in a bunch of criteria, fed it through a filter, and out popped the names of various cities. And I would love to know what the criteria was. Delaney Hall makes a lot of sense. It's in a heavily populated area. It's right outside New York City, and it's very close to the airport. Roxbury does have access to a number of major highways. It's close to Picatinny Arsenal. But, considering that they already have Delaney Hall not, 30 miles away, it is an odd choice to us and certainly doesn't fit, we can't see why they chose here.
Well, it seems to be that's one thing they're consistent about, the lack of clear, concise communication. How much of that has been going on through this process leading up to the actual sale? Which with the sale, is that a done deal that's been approved, or are there still hurdles on that regard?
Well, it depends on what you mean by done deal. So Wednesday of last week, DHS said they purchased it, and then the owner of the property said, no, we didn't. So it appeared it was a false alarm, but then 2 days later, it was announced that its sale had actually gone through, and a deed was registered with the town on Tuesday. That being said, there may be legal challenges to the sale, as well as numerous legal challenges should the sale end up being, 100% a done deal. So even though the sale is disappointing, we had waged a major public pressure campaign on the Delphin Industrial, the owner of the property. Our goal remains the same, and the specifics are now going to be different, but we are still committed to fighting the project because as of right now, all they've done is buy a warehouse, and we want to keep it that way.
Yes.
We don't want to see any human beings housed in there. And there are numerous legal challenges that will be fought, and we hope to, in the end, keep them as landlords of a warehouse.
Doing background on this whole thing, I saw where Maryland is in a similar situation, and they're suing the Trump administration because an environmental analysis and review hadn't been done about the property that's being looked at there. Was that done with this property in Roxbury? Was there an environmental review? Because I know in Sussex County there are state politicians who are expressing concern because the water that supplies a great part of where this facility is going to be comes from the highlands.
Correct. So the answer to your question is no, they haven't done anything. As a matter of fact, they lied. They specifically said that they had done sewer studies and other studies, and I was at the Musconetcong Sewer Authority monthly meeting last night, and it was confirmed that DHS has not done a damn thing. So there are numerous concerns in the immediate area with regards to sewer capacity. A lot of the discharge is treated and then goes directly into the Musconetcong River. And even though it's treated, that doesn't exactly mean it's, something you really want a lot of in the river. There simply isn't capacity to handle the discharge. There isn't capacity to provide it with the water that it needs. But on a bigger scale, it's part of the Highlands. Highlands provides water to 70% of New Jersey residents. So, 2/3 of this state has a stake in what happens here. It isn't just the citizens of Roxbury. There's 7 other cities that share sewer and water, and we all, through the Highlands, could be affected by this.
Talking with William Angus, who is from the No Ice North Jersey Alliance, about the more than proposed detention center in Roxbury, New Jersey. No-Roxbury-jails.com, the website, and you're listening to Issues and Ideas. Let us talk politics, because this topic is certainly full of it in more ways than one. A couple of names that are dominant in this whole thing. Let's start with, and this, I guess, is testimony to how long I've been doing this. I knew their fathers and talked with their fathers. Their fathers were on this radio show. Let's start with Tony Bucco Jr., because he is sitting in a interesting seat where he serves as the township attorney while also serving in the state Senate, where he has been an opponent of any legislation that has to do with addressing what ICE is doing. Talk about his role in all this and how he has been, what part he's played.
So Anthony Bucco, from the start, publicly opposed this proposal. Before it was eventually confirmed, when it was still only a rumor based on the leaked report on the Washington Post, Anthony Bucco made public statements, went on the news, and said, we don't know anything about this, but we don't want this here. So I applaud him for saying that. But that being said, there does appear to be a conflict of interest between his actions in the Senate, supporting ICE bills, opposing anti-ICE bills, and his role here as the township attorney. It's very hard to reconcile how he can be so supportive of ICE policy and also fight ICE being here. And so this issue has been raised at town council meetings. And in the state of New Jersey, if there is a conflict of interest, a town cannot waive its right. Like, if you are a person and there's a conflict of interest with your own attorney, you can waive that. A town cannot. They must address it. And on Tuesday's meeting, someone asked the mayor if they were satisfied with his performance, and they said absolutely. And they clearly do not have any intention of removing him or bringing in a independent attorney for this specific issue. So it just raises the question of how dedicated are the elected officials to fighting this. Their words are great. Their actions, not so great.
Oh, sure. I mean, if you say, I'm with you, I'm going to fight for the cause, and all you do is post a social media post, you're really not helping out here, are you?
Well, in my opinion, I mean, look, it's bad enough that we have these Call of Duty weekend warrior guys cosplaying as law enforcement on the streets of our cities. We don't need the town council cosplaying as the heroic defenders of the town of Roxbury. You know, it's great that they made a resolution and stated that they're opposed to this, but a resolution has no legal standing. The only thing that matters is action, and there are numerous ordinances that have been proven effective in other states in fighting ICE. Like, these were documented wins. And the town council has zero interest in doing it. And we don't understand why. You would think that you would throw everything against the wall, make every effort, even if it's a low percentage chance of success, because sometimes you roll snake eyes, you know? And for whatever reason, the town council has no interest in filing these, in creating these new ordinances. They are clinging to their town attorney, who has, possible conflict of interest. And when the mayor and one of the town council members, after making the resolution that says we oppose ICE here, they went and specifically said, but don't let anyone be confused. We still support the government. We support ICE. We support enforcement of our laws. That's a message aimed at their Republican voters in their town to say, hey, we're still on the same page. And when you talk to only a small subset of your citizens, it makes everyone else wonder, well, are you speaking for us? Are you fighting for us? So they're sending very mixed messages, and it's very hard to take them seriously.
Well, you would think, too, that when they normally see at a town council meeting, maybe on a normal busy meeting, a dozen people, and all of a sudden you're seeing room capacity and people live streaming it so people outside can watch it, that might make the council members think, we better start taking this a little more serious and get a little more active, but apparently not.
Well, you would think so, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because Councilman Riley has this week and in past town councils said that the things he's hearing here don't reflect, air quotes, the values of real Roxbury residents, that our opinions don't have weight and value. And to be honest, that's very insulting to the people of Roxbury who have shown up. But as I said, 70% of New Jersey residents get their drinking water from the Highlands. Councilman Riley seems to be under the belief that only people who live within the borders of Roxbury should have a right to speak about this, and anyone else, their opinions don't matter. Well, I'm sorry, there's 7 other towns immediately around them who are going to be directly impacted if a sewer pipe bursts and dumps, sewage into Lake Hopatcong, right? They absolutely have a stake in this. Their voices are just as valid. And if you live in Monmouth County and get your water from the Highlands, your voice is just as valid too.
Here's the question I have, and you're alluding to this too with zoning laws and changes. Any structure has a limit to how many people could be in that structure. The fire department sets it, the health department sets it. They sometimes will often work together to come up with an agreeable number. I highly doubt that this warehouse facility, albeit all 470,000 square feet, is zoned to hold 1,000+ people. Is that a starting block in the next wave of objecting and blocking this by saying, well, fine, you want to put 1,000 people there, small problem, fire codes, health codes, safety codes say you can't do that? So
the property is not zoned for this purpose. It is zoned to house packages and boxes and crates of stuff, but it is not zoned for human habitation. Unfortunately, because the federal government owns it, they are able to overrule and ignore certain local and sometimes even state laws, sometimes. So there's no question that this is not something that, should be done. But we have seen countless times where DHS simply just does not give a flying you-know-what, and will simply just ignore the laws, even when they are applicable. Fire chiefs want to go in and inspect Delaney Hall, and they don't give them access. And that's a practice that we've seen all across the country. So it's clear that this is a top-down policy of just, stepping all over local and state authorities and saying, we don't care, we're going to do whatever the hell we want.
And I just want to wrap up real fast here, too, because you mentioned the state politicians, Tony Bucco Jr. You've had a mixed reaction, albeit a lot more strength and support from Representative Rob Menendez, Senator Andy Kim, but Representative Tom Kean Jr., he was pretty much ghosting this whole thing until at the very end, where now he shows up with legislation, hopefully promising, maybe giving Roxbury money for hosting the center, because according to most estimates, this is going to cost Roxbury Township $1.8 million annually in lost tax revenue. If you want to do a little fast math, over 3 decades, adds up to about $85 million. And that's a hit that Roxbury really can't financially afford to take.
Well, you're right about that, but it isn't just that. Delaney Hall has 2 police and an ambulance on standby at Delaney Hall. As far as I know, it's 24/7. That's 2 police and an ambulance that aren't responding to people who have had heart attacks or if there's a break-in or a robbery. The local police are already stretched to capacity to deal with just the issues, traffic and, break-ins and things like that. So this is going to be a severe blow to a number of the different budgets of the town. But as for Tom Kean, first of all, Tom Kean Jr. has, been completely silent on the subject, even though it's in his district. And it seems like, the groundhog popped out and gave us 6 more weeks of winter, and Tom Kean Jr. just popped out and said endless ice with this bill that he's produced. It's very clear that he is fine with human suffering as long as the local communities don't have to pay the bill. That is not leadership. That is not defending human rights. That is not defending the residents of your district, okay? That is, frankly, almost worthless, because even if this were to pass, good luck actually enforcing it. Good luck getting money out of the federal government to reimburse you. So we look forward to Tom going back into his hole until next winter, and we'll let real politicians take charge, like Andy Kim and Menendez and Governor Sherrill.
I mentioned you have the website, no-roxbury-jails.com, and a Facebook group as well. What are your priorities in keeping this issue front of mind for as many people as possible?
Basically, continuing the protests. The public protests and showing up at the city hall and at other, we're encouraging people to go to their town halls everywhere across the area. Not just because of the environmental conditions, but if ICE opens up a detention center here, you can almost be assured that we're going to see more ICE activity. And do we want, ICE kidnapping parents who are waiting to pick up their kids at school? Do we want, the local Mexican restaurant to be raided? So it's important that people go to their town council meetings and ask their elected officials, are the local police going to cooperate with ICE when they don't have a judicial warrant, for example? These are important questions that every city across North Jersey, people should be going to their town council meetings demanding answers. They should be going to their school boards, asking them if they have a policy on what to do if ICE shows up and wants to snatch some 16-year-old out of history class. These are the things that we need to be doing to keep this issue from falling off the radar in the quick 24-hour news cycle. And for us, the protests will continue until this threat is gone, period, end of story. And if we have to show up every single day, like if this facility actually opens, there will be daily protests, and they will not go away until ICE goes away.
As you mentioned, too, we have the No Kings rallies nationwide happening on Saturday, March 28th, and I've seen in some of that information that part of the effort in those No Kings rallies is going to include objections to ICE activities across the country, including here in New Jersey. I know that there is one ICE one No Kings rally set for Newton on that day, and hopefully that'll encompass the area. And if you go to nokings.org, you can also find out how, if you want to set up a No Kings rally specifically in the Roxbury area, because you still do have time to do that. And visit the website for the No Ice North Jersey Alliance. Get involved that way as well. Keep informed that way as well. No-Roxbury-Jails.com. We have that link posted at our webpage as well. William Angus, thank you for reminding us about the voice of the people has to be a loud voice. It also has to be a consistent, steady, strong voice. And you help us remember that. And also remember that that document that we are going to celebrate begins with "We the people." It's not "we the government." Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me on and being able to talk about the issues.
Hey, don't forget about the next No Kings rallies happening nationwide. They're coming up on Saturday, March 28th. You can find out more at nokings.org. Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, Tom Oman, among others involved with overseeing immigration, promised to remove, quote, "the worst of the worst" undocumented immigrants in America, and that's indeed what they've done. Those apprehended and deported include violent criminals, drug dealers, gang members, U.S. military veterans. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Oh, sure, Trump and the others won't mention that last one. In fact, Kristi Noem even denied it out loud before a congressional committee, but it's sadly true. My next guest is an attorney and advocate for all who have honorably served in our military and is bringing this issue to light. Benjamin Krause, thanks for being here today, Ben.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
And learn more about Mr. Krause's legal work. BenjaminKrauseLaw.com is the website. I had been long saying that if someone was here in the country illegally and they chose to serve, that would be a fast track. In my mind, a great plan to fast track them into citizenship. Little did I know, and I never even thought to look, that under the Biden administration, that was indeed happening. And when the Trump administration came on board, that rug got pulled out from people who thought that they had done right and made things right. How did you find out about this?
So I found out about the main issue a couple years ago when I was contacted by a veteran who had run into this type of problem, being a non-citizen veteran and dealing with, deportation issues while fighting for his benefits, which caused a significant problem trying to get retraining after being disabled from his military service, and then having to go back and forth between his home country and the U.S. to try to get training so that he could actually use the benefits that he was promised, that he earned, and that our country is supposed to provide. And so because of his citizenship issues, had a lot of problems. And so I've been tracking this now for the past couple of years, and we've seen now with the current ramp-up of ICE enforcement throughout the country. And here, of course, I'm outside of Minneapolis, and so we've been seeing kind of a frontline bleachers to how this policy of the Trump administration has been implemented here locally, and noticed that there are a lot of stories about veterans that have been adversely affected by some of the policy changes and now are fighting their fights from countries where they haven't lived for many decades.
I referenced Kristi Noem was testifying about this in front of a House committee, and she made the denial as I referenced, and the committee member who posed the question actually had a self-deported U.S. veteran because he was given notice to get out, and he took his leave before he was taken out in South Korea. So again, the current administration just doesn't want to seem to recognize this, where the previous administration instituted what's called the Immigrant Military Members and Veterans Initiative, which I guess maybe there could be a debate about this issue, but I never knew until doing research for this segment that signing up to join the military, you don't have to be a citizen. You just have to be a lawful permanent resident. And in the state of things we're in right now with immigration and ICE and Homeland Security doing what they're doing, that lawful permanent residency doesn't seem to be the guarantee and much more either.
Right. And when it comes to the veterans, there are a lot of challenges in trying to get their paperwork done while they're in service. And that's why we do have a significant number of foreign individuals that are in the U.S. who did serve but are not yet citizens. I believe the number is over 100,000. And as I last checked, it looks like Congress is estimating at least 10,000 veterans have been deported through the ICE procedures over the last decade, due in large part to how this policy is kind of rolling out. But it seems like lately we've been having a lot of real issues where you're dealing with veterans who were injured in combat who are now being deported. And whenever, as a veteran rights attorney, whenever I see that, I think most veterans, whether you're right, left, or center, when you see that somebody was, next to you in uniform in combat who did, pay the price and ended up getting a Purple Heart or something like that, seeing them get deported, especially deported to countries where they've never lived, now we have questions. It's not like a huge population of individuals, but when you have former service members, veterans who honorably served, who ended up with Purple Hearts being deported, now we have an entire veteran class of Americans that are going to be looking at this issue a little bit more deeply than normal.
This brings into the picture, too, a whole different side, because I think when a lot of people thought about non-Americans serving in the U.S. military, we think interpreters, and that's where the thought would begin and end, and nothing else in the middle. And what we're learning through this is these are combat veterans, actual combat veterans, not in back-of-line services in any way, shape, or form. You do a lot of work with and through the VA, I am assuming. What is their stance on this? Is it a powerful enough stance? Are they stepping forward in any way, shape, or form to help these veterans?
Well, we're aware that VA created or is creating a database, if they haven't finished it yet, where they're cataloging individuals that are working at VA who may be non-citizens. And that's causing a lot of challenges with VA's ability to provide access to health care. So we know that's happening. But also with respect to the veterans that are being deported or running into these problems, I'm not aware of any particular position that VA is taking to stand up for these veterans in an assertive way, where they're requiring, for example, like ICE or DHS to implement hard stops to prevent these veterans from being deported without a closer look. Because a veteran case is rather complicated, and a lot of what we see within ICE has been to disregard veteran status, or at least to not really verify whether that is an issue. The reason it's an acute problem here is that we have relied for over 100 years on recruiting non-Americans to serve in our military at times of need, and we want to make sure that when we have non-U.S. citizens serving, that we honor our end of the bargain by making an easy path to citizenship for these individuals as a benefit of their service from the first day that they put the uniform on. And our country has grossly failed in this very simple step for many, many years. It's not just a Trump issue either. I mean, this has been going on for decades under many different administrations, again, right and left. And so at this point in time, we hear a lot of rhetoric from the Trump administration about how they love our veterans. And I hope that they will eventually understand that by veterans, they should mean all veterans, not just those that are U.S. citizens, but also those that are non-citizen veterans who also behaved honorably in service. Maybe they ran into some problems after the military, due in part to their untreated PTSD or traumatic brain injury, which has been a factor for a lot of these, some of the Purple Heart veterans that were injured in combat, and then had some behavioral issues after they got out that led to criminal offenses. But then they served their time, and now that they're out, hey, let's take a close look at this and treat veterans with the respect that they deserve. But as of yet, I haven't seen anything appreciable from this administration in willing to help in this way.
No, we always, and this goes back with other administrations too, path to citizenship was the mantra, but the practice and the construction of that path, while as we can see through this discussion right here, was as blatant could be. You serve our nation, you deserve to be a part of our nation. You've earned the right to be a part of our nation through your service to our nation, and for this to be taking place just seems totally unjust. And like Ben referenced, so many are suffering from PTSD, addictions of one kind or another because of the trauma they experienced during and the trying to recover after service. And to look at a person just superficially as opposed to trying to see the whole person, I think is a catalyst for this situation to increase as it has been. But hopefully what Mr. Krause is doing, and hopefully is you as certainly someone who sincerely loves all of our veterans, all who have served, you can do something as well when you hear about this, as you're hopefully paying attention to here. And to learn more about the legal work for veterans of all degree that Benjamin Krause does, you can find out more about his services at benjaminkrauselaw.com. We have that link at our homepage as well. Ben, our returning veterans have such a tough time transitioning, and to add weight to that heavy time is nowhere near any kind of justice or fairness. Thank you for bringing your attention to this issue, and hopefully a loud collective voice can change things for the much better for these heroes who have served us. Thanks so much for being here today, Ben.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate your time.
If you're listening via your favorite podcast platform, make sure you either subscribe or follow so you never miss a minute. This past Thursday, the Department of Justice sued 5 more states now, demanding their election data be shared with the Trump administration. This is a continuation of the push for access to voter rolls from states across the country. Thursday it was New Jersey, Utah, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Those last 4 states, they were wins by Trump, and New Jersey got thrown into the mix. So that means now the DOJ has sued over 24 states to get access to election records. Most of the states, by the way, are blue states. The Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, said the state election officials were, quote, choosing to fight us in court rather than show their work with voter roll access. Continued here, we will not be deterred regardless of party affiliation from carrying out critical election integrity legal duties. So we have a continuation of the claim by the Trump administration that the states can't run the election process fairly and cleanly. Now, does all that tie into what had been brewing in the background, but thanks to the Washington Post is now in the foreground, that 17-page draft executive order that people who buy into election conspiracies are trying to convince Trump to put into action. It would declare a national emergency based upon the long disproven claims that China influenced the 2020 election, and the proposed executive order would take election powers away from the state and give them to the federal government under the imagined national emergency. Just a little bitty problem with that whole concept. It's called the U.S. Constitution, specifically Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1, which happens to be called the Elections Clause. In case you missed that civics class, let me remind you of what it reads here. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the places of choosing senators. And that's been backed up numerous times by the Supreme Court, which has said the Elections Clause enables states to provide a complete code for congressional elections, not only as to times and places, but in relation to notices, registration, supervision of voting, protection of voters, prevention of fraud, corrupt practices, counting of votes, duties of inspector, pretty much everything to do with elections other than the final certification rests with each individual state. So again, this 17-page draft executive order won't have much to stand on, but it hasn't stopped Donald Trump before, has it? E-books have exploded, and I mean exploded in popularity. The origin of this popularity was during the pandemic, you remember that, and it's seen no slowdown ever since. E-books are easy to access from libraries for readers. And regarding libraries, you would think that e-books are a large plus because of the way they allow libraries to provide access for readers to unlimited number of books that take up, when you think about it, no physical space other than a hard drive. That's pretty much it. Now, while that's a great thing, it's also more costly for libraries, and you probably believe, as libraries have been under financial challenges of a variety of sources as of late. This adds to the fiscal difficulties that they have to operate under from time to time. Here to explain how this is unfolding and being dealt with is the director of the Hoboken NJ Public Library, Official Issues and Ideas Librarian Jennie Pu. How are you today, Jennie?
I am so happy to be back on. How are you, Chris?
Always a pleasure to talk about libraries and, well, in some cases, to remind people, hey, there's a library in your town. Go into it sometimes. You'll be amazed at what you're going to find there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you would be.
HobokenLibrary.org to learn more about Jennie's home turf. And talking about ebooks, Jennie, how over recent years, how have you seen the growth of interest and use of ebooks? Because from my personal experience, and I'll confess, I left hardcover books kicking and screaming. Maybe because doing what I do, I was just exposed to so many of them. But I mean, back in the day, 5-10 years ago, every publisher used to send every book to me, to the point when I moved one point and I saw these books all in boxes. I said, you know what? I'm renting a van. There was a Salvation Army store, a thrift shop in my town. I loaded them up with so many books, I think they named a wing of the store after me. But as far as what you've seen with ebooks, how quickly have they been embraced by so many people?
Well, I mean, like you said, it's a point of access. What we've seen in New Jersey, not just in Hoboken, and actually nationally, that demand for ebooks and audiobooks are skyrocketing for convenience, for accessibility, for point of access. And libraries, we spend more every year to try to keep up. At Hoboken, where I'm director, we now spend more on digital content than we do on physical books. But what most people don't realize is that libraries, as public institutions, we have zero ability to negotiate the price, their terms, or even how long we get to keep access. And what's interesting about this problem and why it's compounding is, any other public institution spending this much public money, you would expect to have a say in the deal, and libraries don't. And that's why the New Jersey ebook bill that we have introduced is that's the problem that we're trying to address.
And I think it's the problem is added to by the fact of when you used to think of physical book publishers, there were a bunch of publishers from every size, from the major ones in New York City, local ones somewhere in the middle of Iowa. But for ebook publishers, there's a lot fewer, which creates a lot more encompassed, I don't want to say conspiratorial activities, but they're sitting in the catbird seat, and they can pretty much, at this point at least, dictate what they want the cost to be for libraries.
That's correct. A handful of publishers, really 5 right now, control the vast majority of the most in-demand titles. These are the bestsellers that all of our patrons, line up for, including myself, right? I'm a big reader. And and what's happening is that not only do they control those high in-demand titles, they set the terms. And there is no negotiation on the library's part. We either accept those terms or we don't offer those titles. And so what that's happening is, because they have unilateral control over the terms, which are then executed by our platforms, we end up, having to negotiate this really tough terrain of high prices, restricted access, and just huge demand. So that's why, from a user standpoint, if you've used a library ebook app like Libby, for example, our most popular one, sometimes you can wait up to months for a title. And a lot of folks don't understand why, and I totally get it. And that's because the terms under which we operate are opaque, and we have zero ability to negotiate it, which is really unusual in a public procurement environment.
And you think, too, for the authors that these ebook publishers represent, why do you want to limit people's access to their works? Because most recent stats show about 30% of the reading population are regular readers of ebooks. That number obviously increased, and they're seeing that number going to 35 and to 40% much sooner versus later. But these licensing fees, I was doing some background, the bestsellers, you buy the license, it's not for a year, like a radio station, license music to play for a year, and every year you have to re-up, whether you're streaming or over-the-air radio. But some of these best-selling books, you're limited to maybe a couple of dozen downloads at a time before you have to re-up the license.
That is correct. And there are different models of licenses. But yes, the most common model operating that we have is 26 checkouts or 2 years. Sometimes it's just 1 year. And you're right, when you have a huge bestseller, that means, of course, every library tries to buy multiple copies of that license. But it's not enough when you have hundreds and hundreds. In some libraries outside of New Jersey, thousands of people on the wait list. That's just not sustainable.
So Jennie Pu, who is the director of the Hoboken, New Jersey Public Library, hobokenlibrary.org, is their website, and you are listening to Issues and Ideas. Let's get into this bill because this is, in a way, if you look at it in a wider scope, not just in New Jersey, where this has been shot down by courts, there's a possibility this could work. It's by State Senator in New Jersey, Andrew Zwickard, represents Middlesex County, and this would prohibit publishers from entering into contracts or licensing agreements with libraries that limit the library's normal lending practices or cost them more than what the public pays, which sounds all well and good on its own as a standalone, but this was tried in Maryland, tried in New York, and the Association of American Publishers got it shot down in court because of federal copyright laws, which I get it, and I've seen the websites in the dark web, they call it, where ebooks, you can download it and pay for free. It's almost like pirate radio stations. And what I've long said to the FCC, I now have to say to the Association of American Publishers, why go after people who are trying to be legitimate, like libraries and commercial radio stations? Go after the pirates. Spend your time and money going after them. I mean, that's knock down the crime. But I'm saying that where this has been shot down before, there's an open door through Connecticut. They passed a law last year to compel industry changes. And there's a trigger on this, meaning it only takes effect when one or more states with a combined population of 7 million pass a similar law. Opens the door for New Jersey now, doesn't it?
It sure does. And multiple states are moving forward on this right now. Like you said, Connecticut passed similar legislation that New Jersey has since introduced, and it was an overwhelming 35-1 majority in their Senate, and it was sponsored by a Republican in Connecticut. Rhode Island introduced their bill. What we're seeing here is, the legal case on this is not as set as AAP, the Association of American Publishers, would like to see it. The underlying cause of this is that we're seeing more and more states coming forward because this market was never designed with libraries or the public having a real voice. And so now we're speaking up on behalf of the public, right? We don't want people to be on wait lists for months and months, right? And we want libraries, our mission is to deliver literacy, is to be able to help people discover authors and books, right? We're all part of this beautiful reading ecosystem. To your point, I mean, authors, we want more people to read and discover. So restrictive terms like this is counter to our mission. It's not good for the public, and really, it's really not a good use of taxpayer dollars either.
And everything you're talking about too with cost, that leads me to believe the latest stat shows that 28% of libraries in the U.S. do not offer ebook lending services, which makes me think those are the smaller libraries that can't afford, can't pick up the costs that these publishers of ebooks are creating. Thus, again, restricting, you only have one hard copy of a book versus you can have, depending on what your server allows as far as traffic is concerned, a couple of dozen, even more so, people reading the book at the same time. And in the rotten weather that hopefully we're over and done with around here in the Northeast, someone gets up and looks out the window. I don't want to go out. I wish I could have a book right now. They can't access an ebook. Well, that's a lost time of reading and learning and enjoyment and entertainment that's taken away from that person because of this situation.
And it's not just entertainment. For my mother, she lives in the senior community in Texas. And when I went to visit her, I know this is New Jersey based, but it's relevant. I went to visit her, and the first thing that her neighbors and friends talked about was the audiobooks that they borrow from their public library there and the ebooks. And why was the wait so long? Because for accessibility reasons, right? For some populations, that is the way they read now, right? It isn't, of course, we have large print books, but getting back to what you said earlier too, those smaller libraries right? Especially the rural libraries, the libraries in island communities. Digital access is the primary way they get, access to library materials. So we are entering into a period where this is, like you said, it started in COVID. It hasn't abated. This is a permanent change in user behavior, and we are trying to meet those needs in a sustainable, responsible way with our taxpayer dollars.
So if you want to get a hold of State Senator in New Jersey, Andrew Zwicker, and encourage him to continue with his efforts. I mean, he's been a good guy for libraries here in the state, too, with protecting them from lawsuits, criminal charges by people who are doing the book banning, which thankfully that's subsided. Not entirely, but it's less annoying than it used to be. They've moved on to other issues, I guess, of issues to those people have short attention spans. That's one good thing about them. And if you've never explored ebooks before at your library or download off of Amazon, try it. And again, I was a devoted, dedicated hardcover book reader, and now I've got a tablet computer that has more books on it than an entire room of bookshelves used to have. So for space alone, you're looking around your library, and you can have a library in your hand if you're on the plane, on the bus, in the car, wherever the case may be. That's just so much better with ebooks. So if you've never tried an ebook, I encourage you to do it. And certainly if you're in the Hoboken, New Jersey area, Hoboken Public Library, Jennie will take good care of you. You can find out more about their services, ebooks and otherwise, HobokenLibrary.org. Jennie, always in education. You are an advocate for books, advocate for libraries, an advocate for truth about the both. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Have you ever thought about what purpose a sheep serves? There's the obvious. They provide wool for clothing. They're a source of food, meat, even sheep's milk for things like cheese. They're a lawnmower, doesn't need gas or electricity to operate. Sheep are even used as models for human pregnancy research. I didn't know that until I looked myself. Yet sheep have gotten a pretty bad name, haven't they? Their name is used to reference someone who isn't buying into a conspiracy. You've heard it so many times over recent years. If you think vaccines are good, elections aren't stolen, or September 11th wasn't an inside job, you're called a sheep by the addicts of those respective conspiracies. Sheep are prominently featured, by the way, all throughout the Bible. And it's all good, too. In the Old Testament, book after book, sheep are part of the sacrificial ceremonies that take place at the hands of the shepherds, people of Israel. They're also referred to as lost sheep in the Old Testament. One of the many examples of that is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 6, where God declares, "My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have led them astray. They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place." The idea and role of sheep is even greater throughout the New Testament, and it's the book of Ezekiel that offers, let's call it a prophecy about what's to come. Reading here from Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 7 through 10, with God declaring, "Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. As I live, says the Lord God, surely because my flock became a prey, and my flock became food for every beast of the field, because there was no shepherd, nor did my shepherds search for my flock, but the shepherds fed themselves, and did not feed my flock. Therefore, O shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against the shepherds, and I will require my flock at their hand. I will cause them to cease feeding the sheep, and the shepherds shall feed themselves no more, for I will deliver my flock from their mouths, that they may no longer be food for them." Then in verse 11 and 12, God continues, "For thus says the Lord God, Indeed, I myself will search for my sheep and seek them out, as a shepherd seeks out his flock on the day he is among his scattered sheep, so will I seek out my sheep and deliver them from all the places where they were scattered on a cloudy and dark day." Now that all leads us to what Jesus reveals to us. In John chapter 10, verses 14 through 16, Jesus speaking, "I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and am known by my own. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd." One of the characteristics of the sheep animals is how they have a sense of social community. Some call it a pecking order. Same is true in the eyes of the shepherd, who we serve as Christians. We all have our duties as part of the body of the church. This is what Jesus instructs Peter in John chapter 21, verses 15 and 16. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these?" And he said to him, Jesus, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him again a second time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." The service we're called to as part of his flock leads to a prophecy Jesus tells us about in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 33. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats, and he will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. And by the way, the right hand is definitely the place you want to be. That's when Jesus will welcome the faithful into his eternal kingdom in recognition of us feeding, clothing, nourishing, treating, and giving him shelter. As you most likely are doing now, Jesus tells us that on the day the righteous at his right hand will ask, "Well, when did I do that?" Jesus responds in verse 40 of Matthew chapter 25, "And the king will answer and say to them, Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it for one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." So be joyful in being one of the sheep who belong to the flock of Jesus, for we have a shepherd who will never fail a single one of us and never let a single one of us stray, no matter how great the numbers his flock are. And let's conclude with these words from Jesus, which we find in Luke chapter 15, verses 4 through 6. "What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he loses one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost." Don't forget to check out our website, issuesandideasradio.com. That's where we have more information about the guest who joined us here on the show today. And if you're listening to us via your favorite podcast platform, be sure to subscribe and follow us so you never miss a minute. Always grateful and thankful for your time and your attention. Very valuable, important to us. And we look forward to being with you right here this time next week for our next edition of Issues and Ideas.